Hello and welcome to another exciting episode of the 100 Days of Growth. Today, we are going to look at how to manipulate data arrays using map and forEach. So, a lot of people confuse map and forEach and they don't know where to use map or where to use forEach. But we need to understand their differences and what they are used for. So, let's assume we have an array of objects having name, then we have Joshua, then we have, this is supposed to be const array equal to Joshua, and then we have age 13. We have another object again with array of name Joseph, and then we have Joseph, and then we have age 25, and we have another object again with the name of Anthony, and then we have age of 40. Now, if you want to work with this array, and we use either map, we can use either map or forEach. Now, map works specifically when you want to transform array and return a new array, because map would always transform the array and return a new array. But forEach just works on the array, it does not return anything. So think of forEach as that array method that just mutate data or transform your array without returning any response. But map always returns a response. So a practical use case for your map would be when you're trying to list out items from an array in your UI. And another thing you need to also understand is that you need to explicitly return items from your map, else it will not return. So a very practical mistake most people do is that they define a map and then they add a callback. So maybe you say array, so this should be arrays, right, for plural, and then array singular, and then they do something like this, and then they say, okay, return array.name, right? This is assumed to return array.name. Now this is not going to return anything, right? This is going to, if we console log this and then we say names equal to, this is going to be undefined. Why? Because we just transform the data, we did not return anything. If you see, this is completely empty on line 11, right? Line 11, name is empty. Why? Because we just transformed the data, we did not return anything. So you're supposed to explicitly return, else it would not return any value, right? And then when we explicitly return, if we clear our console and refresh, okay, this is names, not name, sorry, it's supposed to be names, not name. So now you see we return Joshua, Joseph, Anthony. But initially, if we take out this return, it still doesn't return anything, right? You're going to see that it doesn't return anything. It's going to be undefined, undefined, undefined. It returns an array all with undefined. Why? Because we're just transforming the array, but we're not returning anything from the transformation. So you need to explicitly return. The only time when we may not return a value is when we use the single, when working with the arrow function, and then we use just a single line. This automatically returns a value, and then if we come here, we see that there's something, there are values in our array. But if we are going to be using a multi-line method, we're going to be breaking this into a multi-line, then we have to explicitly return after the transformation, else we're not going to get anything in the returned array. Very important you know this, because if you miss this, you are not going to get any value. And I see this very often when most time people run into bugs. Maybe you are trying to say, okay, arrays dot map, and then you say array, and then you try to maybe in your React application, and then you try to enter a div, and you specify, let's say, and then you say array.name. Now this is not going to work, right? Why? Because this is going to return undefined. You have to explicitly return. So whenever you have errors like this, when working with this is going to throw an error now because this is vanilla JS, but if this was in React, we're not going to get an error here. So that's why this is explicitly throwing an error. But if you experience issues like this where you are trying to like map through an array and then you get undefined in your UI, you should know that you are not explicitly returning the array value, and that's why you're getting undefined. So that's the way it works for map. Now for each, like I said, for each just manipulates the method without returning anything. It doesn't return. There's no, if you hover on this, you see that for each gives you void, but map, map always returns a new array. So if you hover on the map, you see it returns a new array of string. So this is the difference between map and for each. For each just mutates the array, transforms it. Maybe for instance here we can say, so whenever you're using a for each, you most likely have a new array here, and then you have like an empty array, and then you can say, okay, in this new array I want to new array dot push, and then maybe you say you want to push in only the name. Then you can say arrays item dot name, and this is it. If we console log new array at this point, you see that we get an array containing name Joshua, and and then we can also push in the names without the object. We can just push them directly like this, and then we get Joshua, Joseph, Anthony. So that's the difference between map and for each. Very important to understand the difference, because most times a lot of people confuse the both of them, and then they use for each and they're wondering, why do I not get any, why am I not getting any feedback, why am I not getting any return value? And then when you use the map, most times because you do not explicitly return a value, you're asking, why am I getting undefined? So you need to understand these two different, so that when working with arrays, you know what to expect and how to handle them. Thank you. I believe you learned something today. If you did and you're yet to subscribe, do well to subscribe. Turn on the notification bell so that you get notified whenever I post new videos. You can like and share this with your friends. Thank you for watching. I believe you learned something today. Bye. See you tomorrow.